Lyons, CEO of Beyond the Drone. We're a software company that helps to enable different groups to work together in a collaborative environment. And today I'm joined by David Shaw from Futura and Matthew Peterson from Asymmetric Technologies, and we're going to talk to you about the successful ways to create an emergency drone operations center and our new collaborative called the Drone Operations Collaborative. So I will go through a presentation, and later I'll have questions for both David and Matthew about how this interactive would work. So thank you very much for your time and enjoy the show. There are several keys for using drones during emergencies. The goal of the drone introduction into the emergency inspection environment is to minimize both collateral damage and to quickly grab information, assess that information, and be able to share it with as many people as possible so repairs can be done quickly. So most organizations have found that they want to be able to be prepared for emergencies, yet they don't have a real plan for it before the emergencies hit. So the Drone Operations Collaborative that we're announcing today is going to give you a turnkey solution that helps you solve your drone emergency issues in utility inspection with one phone call and one piece of software. So the keys for using drones during emergencies are: have an air boss to manage your flight operations, someone that knows where everything is and how everything works and can deconflict the airspace. Have a real-time inspection management software that can allow you to collect the data, inspect and assess in real time, and send things out. Integrated damage assessment tools. Have the ability to know the degree of damage and be able to prioritize things that are of higher or move things that are lower degree for later use. On-demand reporting. On-demand reporting is very important because it allows you to know in a quick way exactly what you're looking for, the level of damage, where the damage was, and how critical the key area was. Standby teams to supplement your staff. This gives you the ability to increase your maybe one-man, two-man drone team to 10, 15, 20 if needed. So we have the ability to implement software and bodies to help you get your job done quickly. And FEMA-ready accountability. It's not just FEMA that you're dealing with. You're also dealing with your insurance companies when they're large emergencies that happen. So what we want to do is offer you the ability to be sure that the logs are all done, the data is all collected and safe, and you have accountability for everything that was done throughout the emergency. Emergency flight management. We initially talked about the air boss. What is the air boss? Well, that's the point of contact on the ground when you're trying to coordinate multiple teams to solve a problem. The air boss deconflicts the airspace, does the emergency planning to make sure who goes where and when, and more importantly, deals with the FAA for the near real-time airspace authorizations for critical infrastructure. The FAA wants to make sure that someone is there to say, here's where we are, this is why we're here, and they're following proper procedures. And that will also help you with your later audit trail with FEMA and your insurance companies. The other reason why you need an air boss is because it gives you one single point of contact on the ground where you may have 10 or 15 teams doing the collection of data in a big emergency. You need to know that one person can get the information that's done, get it back to you, and help you assess it in real time. The air boss tightly works with your flight planning and your crew scheduling to make sure that there's coverage at all times, and the air boss makes sure that the reporting is done in a timely manner. The other attribute of the emergency flight management program is a standby drone pilot and gear strategically positioned to augment your teams. As we said, some of the smaller organizations may have 2 to 3, some may have none that are actually in their drone operations, but they need them to be able to get the work done, or they're being helped by teams that have drones and they have no way of assimilating that information. So our program allows you to bring people on or augment your team and get more for less. Emergency inspection management is the next key area, and that is the ability to monitor, completed and ongoing inspections. You need to know in real time where you are, what's been done, and what's next. Schedule drone inspections. You need to know who's next up on the list to go collect data. And if you're doing real-time data dumps, meaning you take your picture, you bring it down, you then drop your information to the cloud for more people to work with you, then you can actually be doing all of your inspections in real time for someone else to watch it and make sure it's going properly. You need to mass upload your images from multiple disparate teams right into one inspection record. The ease of taking one team to 10 teams gets exponentially more difficult as they grab more and more data from more and more polls or more and more structures. So the ability to be able to put that into one software solution and be able to manage it all in one place and upload it is key and paramount for what we're trying to offer. We get to connect inspection images to the structures. So one of our key areas to help you is not only being able to take your image, but to apply that image to the structure, knowing geospatially where it is, and allowing you to know in real time that tower such and such on feeder such and such is having an issue, or that line such and such or transformer such and such is having an issue. Then, once you know the things that are going on, you can actually create on-demand reports, which allow you to say, these are all my top-level things that need to be fixed as soon as possible. Well, that gives you the ability to then take that list and pull information with the Futura software and be able to integrate a solution for how do we get someone out there as quickly as possible and do our supply chain management. The emergency assessment. Other than grabbing the data and knowing where things are, is knowing how bad things are. And that's what the emergency assessment is. So we want to make sure that you have the ability to assess your images in real time and know what's wrong where as quickly as possible. The software and the team all allow you to compare your structure-centric historical data so that you know maybe feeder line 135 consistently has a problem every year, and you might want to do something about that. From this assessment, you can immediately task an alert for other people to come look at it, other people to come maybe look at the image itself, or to send your repair crews in to fix it immediately. You can deploy remote teams for condition assessments. So once again, we want to be able to augment your solution and allow you to have your team and maybe more teams be able to come in and help you to get this done more quickly. And the faster you do it, the faster your customers are happy. And the bottom line is you already work with Futura. They offer you all the GIS data for your lines and feeder information. And so we integrate seamlessly with that and allow you to be able to know in your existing software what's right, what's wrong, and what to do about it. On-demand reporting. Once the assessments are done, once the data is collected, once the structures are all associated with the particular images, you now need to know in real time what's the scale of your issue. So having on-demand reports, which allow you to review inspections and assessments in real time, being able to create reports based on the attributes, the assets, and the condition status, as well as search and retrieve data by area, feeder, and condition, are all things that you want to know as soon as possible so you can prioritize, in other words, triage your emergency and solve it as soon as possible. And then once you've created that information, you need to be able to map it in a way that allows you to show it and share it with all the disparate teams that are out there to help you to actually fix the damage. And so you can send your results to mapping systems such as Esri, integrate with Futura platform, and ultimately create a FEMA-ready report. Between the different areas of the Drone Operations Collaborative, you will find that the three pockets of work are always paramount to how we do this job. One is the collection of the information and how the drone does it. Second is the assessment of the information and how you're able to know what's going on when. And then finally are the results of those, the first two, in a solution to be solved quickly and hopefully as financially viable as possible. So the virtual emergency response software is tailored to drone workflows. So if you have a workflow that you're using, but you want to augment it specifically for emergencies, this is the solution for you. You have an air boss that can manage the flight teams and the airspace and give you the ability to know that there are not going to be any violations of the FAA or corporate policies, as well as there won't be planes hitting each other in the sky. Drone service providers are under contract to be able to help you augment your system and get more bodies on the ground as soon as possible to get the solution solved. And the damage assessment teams to extend your staff. So not only can we have boots on the ground to do the work, but we can remotely view the damages and help score them so you know what's bad and what's worse, and then be able to work with it. And then finally, a 24/7 support team to ensure your efficiency. So not only can we help you assess it really quickly, but we can also be there to make sure that you understand what the actual calamities are and help make custom reports in case others need to see it. And finally, the FEMA ready reporting. Let's be honest, it's all about the money, and we want to make sure that we save you money, and we save you money by having an accountable program that keeps everything in perspective and allows you to hand off to both your insurance companies and FEMA. Joining me now in the panelist portion of this presentation is David Shaw from Futura. He's the Director of Strategic Partnerships and brings with him over 15 years of experience as a specialist in electric cooperative industry. David is well versed in the issues that the smaller cooperatives have and understands what emergency operations need in order to help the cooperatives get back on their feet as quickly as possible. We also have Matthew Peterson from Asymmetric Technologies. He's the U.S. Program Manager, and he's responsible as a jack of all trades for the what, where, when, why of the UAS operations, and he understands airspace as the airspace boss, and he can help deconflict issues in real time. Matthew's been with Asymmetric for 7 years, and he is both a 107 certified pilot and has worked with them attaining their previous 333 exemptions. He's a 21-year Army veteran who was twice awarded the Bronze Star Medal. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So we're going to have a pretty reasonable discussion about what makes the drone operations collaborative work. And I wanted to talk to you, each of you, from your perspectives as the software back end and also as the person who runs kind of on the ground and gets the data in to that software. So I'm going to start with you, Matthew. What is the number one issue utilities face when they're responding to an emergency?
Well, there's usually a bunch of issues all happening at once when you're responding to any type of disaster or emergency response. One of the problems that's kind of congruent in the energy industry, whether it's a smaller electric cooperative or a larger energy entity, is that they have processes in place for emergency management of ground crews and resources that are pretty much rely on these time-proven but slow methods of moving resources from place to place and finding out, basically what has happened post-emergency. And so one of the largest challenges that's recently, emerged with the evolution of drone technology is how to leverage UAS technology and newer technologies and software into this emergency space where they're able to manage resources and allocate them to responding to the emergency efficiently. That's one of the larger problems that is congruent among the space that all utilities are trying to figure out right now.
Thank you, Matthew. I think that makes sense. And so, that leads right into the simple question with you, David. What do you see as the big issue or the key issue from a software perspective in dealing with an emergency for the utilities?
Well, from a software perspective, again, we're all about data. So the trick is in an emergency is turning observations into data, because I can't, it's not word of mouth. I can't turn what somebody saw out there in the field into data that can then be used. We go through the whole process. We want to roll trucks. We want to have a permanent record of it for FEMA later. All that data that you need that, again, is essential to the software world. But ultimately, in an emergency, those are just observations at that first moment. And that's one of the things I'm very excited about this whole process, is because that's one of the things that drones do just by nature. They change observation into data, to something that software can consume, to something that we can then take action on and really use to our system. And again, data is the core to everything we do. I mean, again, we're a GIS company. Without that system of record, without that, data in the first place, there's just nowhere to go. In an emergency, that becomes even more important. So to me, that's the core of changing that, putting those eyes on the thing, or in this case, that camera on the thing, but then turning it into a piece of data that then we can manipulate and take action on.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, David. So Matthew, my question for you is about the air boss. The air boss. What is the air boss? What does he do? What does it mean to be the air boss? Could you give us a better a feeling for that?
Sure, Derek. It's a really good question because that question basically ties in my answer with what the problems utilities are having with David's answer, because the air boss really acts as the conduit between the infrastructure owning company, and the aerial assets that are now being able to be employed to get a handle on the emergency. So the air boss basically acts as the director of it's kind of what it spells out as he coordinates the activities of all the aerial assets that these companies can leverage to respond to an emergency. And that includes the use of drones as well as rotary and fixed wing platforms, which most energy companies are used to using. But the air boss is unique because he's kind of I'm referencing him as a person, but really the air boss is that one management center, meaning you can have more than one or two, but energy companies don't have this. He's the one management center where all the operations can be, can go through, be deconflicted, and he's that point of communication between these aerial assets and the customer who owns the infrastructure that's being looked at. So right now, what's happening when utility companies are responding to emergencies is they're very good, like I said before, they're very good in having an idea of how to scale up and manage ground resources. That they're drilled, they set up these emergency centers. What they're not so good at is incorporating aerial assets. And that includes helicopters, which they have used. It's always been this external, asset that is very hard to control. Normally, the director of emergency management for any company is not as well versed in incorporating air assets, where the air boss is. And ideally, and one of the strengths of the dock is that we not only promote an air boss, we not only add an air boss to the equation, but the air boss is well versed in emergency management, use of drones, use of aerial assets, what energy companies look for, what they need to manage, how they need to manage resources. They're able to understand maps, aerial applications, aeronautical charts, and they're well versed in communicating all these orders both back and forth between the aerial teams and the customer in a language that they all understand. So the air boss really becomes essential to making sure that the operation stays safe and efficient by assuming all this data in real time and being able to direct the aerial assets and give the customer a real-time status of what's being done on the ground with their infrastructure.
So Matthew, I think that's a great answer. I guess one way of looking at the air boss is almost like a universal translator. So they translate the needs of the utility to the people that are collecting data on the ground, and they translate the needs of the people on the ground and the data that's on the ground back to the utility. And this ability to speak both of those languages and keeping everything safe is a coordinated effort that the air boss allows.
You're exactly right, Derek, because a lot of times, and some companies are already starting to integrate drones into their emergency management, and it's a problem because it's fragmented, but it's a problem that the air boss solves because he's able to direct these movements of aerial assets, and he knows what's being able to what should be looked at, and how that data should be interpreted. And he's also able to provide this common operating picture of everything going on in the air, for the company that's responding to the emergency. So yes, he really becomes this very vital focal point for directing all these assets to make sure that the power is restored as fast as possible, rather than somebody who's receiving data points from several separate entities that aren't interconnected and are just basically operating on their last known directive, or the lineman or engineer they happen to be paired up with, or the energy representative that happen to hire them. All this data is very conflicted, and what it does is it slows down that emergency picture for the company. The AirBoss negates all that and makes everything more efficient and smooth.
Well, that's great, because that's a great lead into the question I have for David. And I was thinking about, obviously, if you're getting your data quicker, it can help with supply chain management. How does that work? How fast does the process like this allow you to, through Futura's software, help in the supply chain management portion of the emergency?
Well, I mean, and I was actually about to chime in, Derek. I mean, that's exactly what Matthew's talking about. I mean, having that central point of contact makes all the difference. I mean, again, as you know, you've got all that information. I mean, there's a mass amount of information, just on boots in the ground in an emergency situation. But now you're including all the drone information. Again, now you're getting, all these pictures of your entire system in this emergency situation. And I mean, it can be overwhelming if you're, setting those conduits through, everybody's just talking to an individual person. You've got mutual aid crews that are coming from other utilities that don't even know what they're looking at. So having that central person that is that universal translator that understands the observation, the crews, the actual action that needs to be taken, but at the same time understands that the result is that I need that to be data from the software side. I need that to be actionable. I need that to have certain information, and can teach those crews. Again, I mean, even if you've set this up a process internally, you've got a crew coming in from a utility that could be from multiple states away. They could be from a completely different terrain type. They could not even understand. Again, you're in a swampy coastal area, and they're from arid mountains. There's so much data there that having that person to transfer and streamline that data that makes the supply chain. Again, the data is going to get there. I mean, we usually work in the day-to-day in a world where if you're staking a job, you've got time. If a day extra happens, if something comes up, that's it. You're in an emergency situation. You don't have that time. You've got to get that data to it. You've got to get it there as efficiently as possible. And so having that, that point of contact, that person to help manage the thing is just invaluable.
So that makes perfect sense to me. And I when I think about that, I also think about from Matthew's perspective as the air boss, and you're doing this work. I'm going to take the air boss hat off, and I'm going to put on something that is both done by boots on the ground, but also could be done remotely, and that's the assessment. So, how is a real-time assessment done, and what are the advantages of being able to do a real-time assessment or scoring of the damage in the middle of operations?
So the emergency assessment there and David alluded to this. There's a few different ways it can be done, and then there's the most efficient way, which is what what we're proposing. Because it's an advantage that the doc has in doing all this. So the assessment can happen in a few different ways, and going back to what David said, there's typically 3 different ways that companies can come by this data, and one is, it's very fragmented and it comes in at certain times, and there's a certain person responsible for looking at the data and resourcing the maintenance assets towards whatever they find in the data, the pictures or the video, the imagery. And then there's, a second way of doing it where every aerial asset, everybody out there has a central, collection center, whether it's a portal or a cloud or you're meeting with somebody, and all the data is funneling into one point. And once again, the data is being sifted through, and there's a dedicated person to to basically assess the structures and see what has actually happened now that they're being able to see this. And then you have the third way, which is what the advantage that the doc has, which is basically to have the capability to assess all this infrastructure in near real time as the data is coming in, which is what we do. And in fact, the doc has just as much experience assessing structures for utilities as it does just flying them, which is one of our key advantages. We're not, we don't employ a bunch of pilots who just basically push the sticks and take pictures and dump them on the energy companies and say, here's what's broken. Now we help them fix it, and that's using Util-Inspect. It's one of the ways we can solve this problem for them in near real time, because as these images are pouring in from the different assets that the air boss is coordinating, we're able to flag these images and score these images. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to happen. A customer can say, we don't want the air boss or any of his management team to assess the structures, and they can dedicate somebody that's ultimately going to resource the maintenance of that structure. But our air boss and the team has the ability to do this in real time, and basically he can do this as efficiently as getting the data in from the teams. The way that the doc it works in an emergency situation, the data is all coming into one localized port, one point where the air boss or the assessor has access to it all as soon as it uploads, and is able to assess the damage and resource its maintenance from the exact same platform that he's assessing the structure from. So as images start coming in of down lines, down structures, other points of interest, other safety aspects that he's seeing, not only is he able to assess the structures and say, these are the deficiencies, these are the faults that are impacting your circuit right now, is the ability to turn that right around, and from the platform itself, alert the company, alert the customer, alert necessary resources, to include the pilots themselves that are actually flying the structure in real time, and say, this is what's going on, these are the problems. And going back to what I just said about alerting the pilots, those teams, those drone teams that are out there, as they're uploading this data, they can receive data from the air boss or the assessor that says, this is really bad, for example, this is really bad, fly this again, he can provide them more direction, or you say, just send an acknowledgement, data received, move to this area, and continue on. It reduces that lag time exponentially, from gathering the data to actioning resources to fix the outage.
So that's a great point that leads me to the next question I have for David. So I think what Matthew's talking about is the fact that data can be brought into the air boss, kind of managed and then dispersed to the utility through software that allows it to get into Futura's hands and give them a chance to help them through their software, solve the problem. So that means there's a lot of push-pull in between the Futura software and the Drone Operations Collaborative doc software, which is Util-Inspect. So my question for you is, how quickly can you start receiving information if it's handed out to you from the doc from Util-Inspect into a Futura backed system? How fast can things happen once that's kind of pushed up to the cloud?
Well, there's sort of two answers to that. I mean, the truth is, we work in the software world, so the answer, initially is instantaneously. I mean,
right.
As soon as you can get a connection, as soon as you can get that information, and then that's important because we're talking about a real-time emergency situation.
Right.
We've got to get that information in as quickly as possible. But again, and I could say that between any Futura process. Well, of course, the data will move. It's just software. We can move it instantaneously.
Right.
But it's not as simple as that. It really, in the end, it's sort of like what I would like to call the speed of workflow. which means there's planning to be done here. You've got to work in. I mean, the truth is, step one was our interaction, us getting together and working on that data and moving that data back and forth between your software and Futura. Again, we're working on that part and getting that part done already. But again, you've got to work on the workflow. The reason the whole part of this process is to plan ahead of time, be ready for that emergency before it happens, to have these people that are experts like the Air Boss and out there that are going to be able to tell you and move that data back and forth, and then trigger the workflows. And in our own software, you've got to make sure you've got your inspections talking to your service orders to roll a truck out, to send the alerts out. Again, and that all takes that work, that planning, and that expertise. I think that's one of the things I really like about what's being offered here is it's offering that opportunity to plan that ahead of time. It's offering the tools to do it, but it's also offering, and what Matthew and them do, that expertise is we've been out there, we've done this, we know how to do this, and designing that workflow ahead, because data will move instantaneously. That's the nature of data. But crews, people, all the logistic parts, that's a nature of the speed of workflow, and that's what's important here. That's what getting that all process in, putting all these things together, which is exactly what we're talking about here. That's what the real speed of things are, and that's the real value to this of this whole process to me, is to get that stuff in line. So when that emergency happens, it can move as fast as the data, instead of you trying to figure out how it's going to move at that time. You've already got the expertise on the ground. You've already got the tools in the drones. You've got the tools in Futura software to have the data flawlessly move so you can get the power back on for your customers.
Thank you very much, David, Matthew, for your great responses today. And thank you guys for listening to our presentation on the Drone Operations Collaborative. We wanted you to feel like you can have a turnkey solution that can help you solve your problems in an emergency environment. But what's most important about what David just said and what Matthew said before is, in the middle of an emergency, it's incredibly difficult to finish and bring somebody on board to have them help you. So what we'd like you to do is think about how you want to solve your emergency issues and contact us. Let us know if we can help you figure out a turnkey solution that works for your collaborative and for your cooperative, and how it can help you solve your problem as quickly as possible. You can either reach us via email at doc@beyondthedrone.net, or you can reach directly to David at Futura. And I'm sure you guys know him very well, and you'll have a chance to ask him any questions you have, and then we can work together on seeing if we can solve your particular emergency needs. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.